Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Peter. Today we are going to be building a Node.js email sender using Node and NodeMailer. It's going to be in 4 series because we have a lot of things that we are going to set up for this project. So if you'll be wanting to know how to send email from your Node.js application, maybe for a simple API or for a simple server, a welcome email, a sign up email, want to verify password or just to send a token, then we are going to cover that here. So using NodeMailer, and everything we are going to be using, we are going to use from a free platform. So there is no need for credit card information required for any of the services we are going to use in this application. So we are going to start off. In the application, we are going to build up our application by setting up TypeScript, Eslint, and Prettier in the first part of our video. So if you don't know how to set up TypeScript, Eslint, and Prettier, or you have not used TypeScript before in your application, then this particular first video will help you to learn how to set up your TypeScript, configure Eslint, and Prettier to be used in this application or in any other application that you need to use TypeScript for. Once we are done setting up TypeScript, setting up Eslint so that we can enforce a coding style and also track bugs before we move to production, and then also set up Prettier to format our code, we'll then move on to building the server. So the server, which is the part where we'll be sending the email, we'll be learning how to send email using NodeMailer. We also learn how to send attachment. So maybe you want to send an image, you want to send a PDF, or you want to send just the content. You also learn how to send attachments using NodeMailer. We also learn how to send to multiple email addresses at a go using NodeMailer here. Now, once we are done building our server, the next video we are going to build out a client. Now we are not going to use React or Vue or Angular. We are going to use a template engine. We're going to use a template engine to create a client to consume our API, our server. So right there, so we're going to use a template engine to do that. So I can build a very simple application, a very simple UI that is going to consume or we get information from to send to our server to send email to. So if you get to this part, and once we are done here building this client for our application, then we'll now move on to deployment. So we'll push our code to GitHub and we'll deploy to render. So initially we would deploy to Heroku, but Heroku now has a policy they do not have any more free tiers, but Render does have. So if you go to render.com, you have free tiers, so you can push your application maybe for testing, maybe you want to show it to potential employees, and you do not have to pay for it for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of application that you have. So with render.com, if you have never used Render before, if you don't know how to push to Render, so we'll deal with all that here. So you learn how to push to render.com, learn how to push to GitHub. So now all these videos, they are independent. So if, for example, you just want to learn how to set up Eslint, TypeScript, and Prettier, all you have to do is you watch the first video and then you can go to my GitHub. So if you go to GitHub, which I'll put the link in the video description, if you go to the GitHub repository for this application, if you click on the branches, we have 4 branches. So if you click on the branch that is currently open, which is main, you will see 3 other. We have client, we have mail server, and we have TypeScript-Eslint-Prettier. So if you just want to grab only the Eslint, Prettier, and TypeScript configuration, you can just click on that. So you click on that branch. So that will take you to that branch, and everything that you have here will be the configurations for Eslint, for TypeScript, and Prettier. So you don't have anything clocking you up. Then if you just want to build the Eslint, the TypeScript, you want to configure that and also build the server, you don't want anything to do with the client, you can just go back here, click on the branch, and then pick up mail server. So everything here handles the sending of the email from the server. So maybe you want to connect it to your own application that you have built, you don't want to watch how we do connect it to your own application, you can do that. So you just go here and then you pick everything here and you move on. Now, so if you then want everything that we have done, you want to set up TypeScript, Eslint, and Prettier, you want to build up the server to send in the emails and the attachments, then you also want to build up the client part and you want to see how we did it, then you can just come here and click on the client. So that is that. So this one has our template engine and everything set up for us. So you come here and you pick that, you clone from here. So for you to just use it, just clone it, go to code, and then you can copy this. Depending on how you do, you can also download zip and then use it for your application or whatever you want to do. Now finally, if you want to deploy with us, if you want to do deployment with us, or if you just want to copy all the things that we have done, just to follow along, maybe there's a mistake in what you type or you want to check for errors, you can just go and click on main, so which has everything even with our deployment configurations. So that is that. Here is the live application. So, but this is the client part, and we built it out using the template engine. We also did a lot of validation. So if I don't type anything here and I just click on send, it shows an error says please provide a subject. So if let's say I add a little thing here and I click on send again, then it says please provide one or more recipients. So we are going to check to make sure you have a recipient. So here we allow users to be able to type more than one email address that they want to send to. So in case you want to send to multiple email addresses, if it's just one, just put one there. So for you to type, you can just separate by comma and we'll send it to all the emails at once. So once you are done doing that, we also do validation. So if I just type something that is not correct here and I press on send, it's going to throw an error that this is not a valid email address. And I have to make sure that it is valid. And once I do that, I enter my message and I click on send and I have my email sent to me. So if you want to learn validation using JavaScript, which we are writing, which our code will be compiled to, then you stick around. Alright then, so we have these 4 videos coming out. So we have the one for TypeScript, Eslint and Prettier. We have the one where we're building the server, and then we have where we're building the client, and then finally we'll be pushing to GitHub and deploying to render. So sit tight, sit back with me, and let's get straight to the video. First of all, we are going to set up our project. So if you look at my terminal, you can see that I'm already in my desktop. I want to create a folder which we are going to use to work on this particular project. I'm going to say mkdir, and I will call this project node-email-sender, and I hit enter. So that creates a folder for me. If you look over here at the left side, I have a folder. Now I'm going to go into the folder by saying cd node email sender. Now right inside this folder, here is where we are going to configure and set up the application to use TypeScript, Eslint, Prettier for now. So let's get started. First of all, let's say yarn init-y. So -y simply means that answer yes to everything that we have. Every question that we are going to be asked, we want to answer yes to it. So I hit enter, and then this creates a package.json file for me. Now I can open that up by saying, let me open up in VS Code by saying code dot. Alright, so I open up in VS Code. Now I click on package.json. You see what it has created for us. We have a license, we have a main, we have a version, and then we have the name of our file or our application. Alright then. So let's go back to the terminal and install some few stuff here. First of all, we are going to install, because we are using TypeScript, let's install types for Node first. We will say yarn add -d, which is dev at types/node. So we're installing for Node. We're also going to install for Express, because we're going to use Express.js for this application. We're going to say add types/express. We also need to install TypeScript, because obviously we're using TypeScript, so we're going to install TypeScript. So, and we hit enter. So this is going to take some time to install. The application is done installing. Let's move on. Now, still inside here, let's just test what we have. So let's create a source file. We need a configuration for TypeScript. So we need a tsconfig.json. We can create that manually, but we also have a command line tool that is installed with TypeScript to help us do that. So what we're going to do now is to set up TypeScript. So to set up TypeScript, we need to, first of all, you need to install TypeScript global on your machine. So you can run the command yarn global add TypeScript. Now this is done. To check if your TypeScript was installed successfully, just type tsc-v, and then you see my version here. So tsc comes with TypeScript. This is what we will use to bundle our code into JavaScript. So you can just check that, and once you see your version, it's fine. If you don't want to install TypeScript on your machine, you can use npx tsc. You can be using npx to run your commands. So once you have tsc --init, then you hit on enter. This is going to create a tsconfig.json for us, where we pass our TypeScript configuration. So it's done. You can see it here. So let's take a look or a peek at the file inside there. I'm going to expand it. So we now have tsconfig.json. And then we have so many rules here that you can configure on your own. So we have a lot of things to set here. Okay, so you can see here we have our target. So we are targeting ES 2016. We have, if we go down, we have our libraries. What are we targeting? Is it EX6? Is it the DOM? We have, let me take a look. The module, we are targeting CommonJS. Then we have root dir, root directory. We have module resolution. We are using Node. Then we have our types, type roots. We also have JavaScript support. Are we supporting that? Let's say allow JS true. And then we have our out dir. Where do we want TypeScript to attribute our file once it's done being compiled down to JavaScript, and so many more. So I've gone ahead to create out the rules that we're using, and then what we're just using here in our compilation, we're saying that we're targeting ES 2016. Our libraries, we are looking at ES6 and the DOM. Our root directory, which is where our files will live, our TypeScript files will be in the source folder. And then what else is here? Our out directory, where we want TypeScript to build. These two will be the build folder. So TypeScript will help us to have a build folder. Then if you scroll down, we have our types, which is Node. We also have type roots, which is going to be a folder where we're storing our interfaces. We're going to call it as types. Then we want TypeScript to include only everything in the source file. So which is what we have here. We want you to include everything in the source. I want you to exclude everything in the public, which is going to host our static asset, and then everything in the node modules. So we have created a tsconfig.json. Now, if you look at our package.json, we still need to have a way to run our projects. So we need to add a script. We do have to install a package that will enable us to run our TypeScript without having to compile down to JavaScript first. So we are going to install TS Node. That will help us to run our TypeScript without compiling down to JavaScript first. I'm also going to install NodeMon, which we watch our TypeScript files, and then it's going to compile it. It's going to trigger our server to recompile each time there is a file change. So that's what we're going to do. So let's install TS Node and NodeMon and configure them for application. Let me close this up. So we're going to see yarn add ts/node and then add NodeMon. Okay, so it's a dev dependency. So we are going to say yarn add -d to show it's a dev dependency. All right, so our package is done installing, and we now have TS Node and NodeMon installed as dev dependencies. Now, for our TypeScript, we need to install another package. This package is called rimraf. It is going to help us to delete the build folder. So what we want to do is, whenever we want to build, we want to delete the build folder that we already have and then rebuild it from scratch. So let's install that. Yarn add -d. So it's rimwrap is the equivalent of, if you're on a Unix system, let's remove -f, kind of forcefully removing a folder. Now, scripts, we're going to have a dev script, and then what we want to do is that we want our dev script to be for development. So what do we want to do? We would run development script here, but we want to run it using NodeMon. So we're going to say npx NodeMon. We want to run npx NodeMon. But now for us to run this, we need to configure NodeMon. So the way I want to do it is, I don't want to pass a command here for NodeMon. I want to create a configuration file for NodeMon. So whenever we run the script yarn dev, I then want this to run what I have in my JSON file for NodeMon. So I'm going to go back to our application here, and I'm going to create a file called nodemon.json. Now inside the nodemon.json file, we're going to add this there. So let me close this up. So I'm going to have watch is source. So we're telling nodemon you should watch the source folder. Whenever any file in the source folder changes, we want nodemon to trigger a server to recompile. Then we are watching for what extension? We are watching for .ts and .js. Actually, we won't even have .js extension there, but we'll just leave it like this. For now, we are not ignoring anything. So what is the command for nodemon to execute? We say execute npx tsnode.source/index.ts. So the index.ts is our entry here, entry file here. So whenever we run yarn dev, it's going to say npx nodemon, which is going to execute this command here, using this as flags. All right, so that is our dev script. So if we run it now, if I go to the terminal and I say, okay, I don't have any index.ts yet. So let me go and create that now. So if I go back here, I don't even have a source folder yet. So let's quickly create that. So right here, right click and click on folder, new folder, click on source. Now click on the source and right click again, click on new folder, no, not new folder, but click on new file and type index.ts. So right here, I just want you to say console.log, let's say hello. So we now have a file in our source folder, which is where we told TypeScript to look for. If you look at our tsconfig.json, we told TypeScript to look for our files or in the source folder here. And then we don't cover the extension. We told it to look at everything here. And the same thing we have for nodemon here. We say watch the source folder. We want it to watch the source folder. So let's go back to here to the index. Okay, we already have the index.ts already. So let's now go to the terminal and test our first package.json script, which is yarn run dev or yarn dev. So you can say yarn run dev. So you can either say yarn run dev or simply you say yarn dev. They are both equivalent. So I'm going to say yarn run dev, where I might keep saying yarn dev in the future. So if I say yarn run dev now and I hit enter, then it runs the script npx. You look at it, it says npx nodemon. Now that script is going to execute, and then it runs our own script which says npx tsnode.source/index.ts. So tsnode enables us to run TypeScript without having to compile down to JavaScript first. Alright, so and it simply prints hello, and then it's waiting for the file to change. So let's say I go back to index.ts and I say hello world and save hello world. If I save, so it automatically restarts, which is the work of nodemon for us. Now it prints hello world. So that is what nodemon will be doing for us. So that is that for the dev dependency. That is that for development. Now let's set a script for start. So let's say you are in production and you want to start. Or let's build first. Let's build. So I'm going to kill the server by pressing Ctrl C and clear. Let's go back to package.json and let's add comma here. Back to the script. So we want to build. So we say build. And what do we want to do? So we are going to say rimraf. Like I said, rimraf will delete the build folder. If you go back to our package.json, tsconfig.json, we told TypeScript that whenever we build, we want you to put it in a folder called build here. If you look at it here. So we are going to say rimraf is just delete this folder, and I want to say delete the folder /build. So remove that folder for us. That's what we want you to do. Now once you remove the folder, when I put this sign here, ampersand, double ampersand, in it means that it's going to run this command first, then it will run the command on this side. So if you want to add multiple commands, that is how you add it in your package.json. So now once you have removed that file, I'm just going to say run tsc. So tsc will simply compile it down to JavaScript. So even without not being in a script folder like this, you can just run tsc and it will compile your TypeScript down to JavaScript. So whenever we run yarn build, we want to remove, if there's a build folder, it doesn't matter, we just check, remove the build folder, and then we compile back to JavaScript. We compile down to JavaScript. So that is for the build. Now, what about if we want to start? Let's say we're in production and we are not in development anymore, we want to start. So let's say start. Of course, we are also going to say yarn run build. So what we want to do is, when we want to start, we now call this build first, which simply means run the rimraf / build, and then which simply means remove the build folder, and then compile down using TSC to JavaScript. So we do that first. But now we want to start the server. So, and our build file, if you look at our entry file here, it is index.js. So our build file, we're now going to say node, because we're now in production, we say node /build, which is where our entry file is going to be, /index.js. So once we run this now, it's going to build. Let me see if I can expand this. It's going to build. So once it builds first, then it runs this. So this will run our file and start up our application. So with this now, let's try out this. So let's run yarn build. And once we run it, we expect to see a build folder here at the top level of our application folder. So let me go back to the terminal. Let me minimize a bit. I'm going to run yarn build. So it runs out this here. It removes any build folder that we do have. And then it compiles everything inside our source to TypeScript. It says it is done. Now if you look at this place, you see we now have a build folder. Now if I click on this build folder, inside we now have a file called index.js, which simply contains the console hello world that I had. It now added use strict to it. So this is the TypeScript file, and this is the JavaScript equivalent. So that is what we are going to do whenever we say yarn build. And we do the same thing when we say yarn start. We first build, then we start the file. So let's try yarn start. So I'm going to delete the build folder, and then we do yarn start. So let's say yarn start or yarn run start. So we are expecting it to print out hello world. So it says hello world, and that means the application has built successfully and also started successfully. All right, so our TypeScript is working fine, and we also have the build folder and index.js all here. Everything is working fine. Now what we need to set up is Eslint. So we want to set up linting for our application so that we can be able to enforce a coding style, a coding rule that anybody that might want to work on an application would have to follow to avoid clashes or different ideas. So to set up Eslint, we need to install couples of packages. Okay? Yarn add -d. So they are all dev dependencies. I'm going to say add Eslint at TypeScript-Eslint/parser, which is going to help Eslint to understand TypeScript. The same thing at TypeScript-Eslint/Eslint-plugin, which are recommendations that has been placed already. We will just get from there instead of setting up the whole rules ourselves. So I'm going to install these packages. All right, so they are done installing. Now that we have Eslint installed in our package, if I go to package.json, you see the Eslint package, you see Eslint parser, and Eslint plugin that we have for specifically for TypeScript. What we then need to do is to create a configuration for Eslint. So in order to do that, you go to your terminal and you say npx eslint --init. So this should do it. So it says, how would you like to use Eslint? I'm just going to go with the default here, which is just to check syntax and find problems. And then it asks, what module do I use? I'm using import and export, so I'm going to pick the first one. They ask, what framework does your project use? This is not a React or Vue.js project, so I'm going to say none of this. Does your project use TypeScript? Yes. So I'm going to use my arrow key here to go to yes. Are we running on a browser? Are we going to run in a browser or in Node? So what you have to do here is, first of all, browser is already selected. So to remove the selection, you have to hit on the space bar. So that removes the selection. Then use your arrow key to go down to Node and then click on space bar to select Node. So that's how we do it. Now you hit on enter. It says, what format do you want your config file to be in? I want it to be in JSON format. So I'm going to pick JSON using my arrow key. Then it says there are some installation I need to do because of what I picked. I'm going to say yes, install those packages. What package manager am I using? I'm using Yarn, so I'm going to pick Yarn. Then installation goes on. Now, all we need to do is to, let me clear the terminal. Let's take a look at the file I created. So it created a file for us, eslint rc.json. If I click on it, then we have our environment. We are running Node through, we're running ES 2021. Then here is where we have our plugins with their recommendations. So we don't have to create any recommendation ourselves. So these ones have been created and recommended, and we're just using it. We're not overriding anything, and we have our parser. Then we have our parser options. The ECMAScript ECMA version and the source type. Then we have our plugin, which is TypeScript/Eslint. Then here is where we pass our own rules. Let's say we have a rule I want to pass here. Here's where we pass the rules. So let's say I pass a rule for now. Enlarge this. So I've passed two rules here. So I say the first rule I have passed, I said no unused var. So this simply means you cannot declare a variable that you are not using. You should throw an error. So I said error here. We have one, we have error. I think we have one other one. And then I said consistent type definition. So I want you to have a consistent type definition. So this will prevent us from having things like interface. So we don't have to say type. And then it's going to throw an error if you do that. So I just want everything here to throw an error. No warning. We can also say something like no console. So if I put that one there, then our index.ts will be flagged. So if I say no-console. Oh, not here. Is it here? Not here, outside. If I go here and I say no, so you can see as I'm typing many rules are coming. Like this one says no await in loop. So this simply means that if you are looping, you cannot call an await function inside there, which is very a very bad pattern to await things inside a loop. So you can block that. There are many rules, but what I'm just going to say is no console. So you can choose the ones or add the ones that you want, and I'm going to say it should throw an error. So we have error, we have off, and we have one. So off is just to turn off the rule. Maybe you don't want the rule to apply anymore, you can turn it off. Then error is to throw an error, then one is just to throw a one. So I'm going to say error. Once I save now, our index.ts should be flagged because we have a console log there. So if I save, you see it turns to red, showing me that there's an error. And then if I check it, if I hover on it, it's throwing an error. If I hover, it's kind of throwing an error, but this guy is talking about console here, but it's supposed to be telling me about the error from Eslint. But obviously, you know that once I did that, the error came about. So I can change it to 1, so it will not be red, it will turn to kind of yellowish. So I'm going to say 1. And then you see how it changes. I think it's orange. And then it's warning me that, okay, no console or log is allowed. But most of the time, I just want errors for important things. So you can have this there, but I don't need to say no console because I'm going to use that. I can actually use the one that says no await inside a loop. No await in loop. So if we get to see that, we want to throw an error immediately if you try to await in a loop. So you can use ESLint to configure a lot of things, set up rules, coding styles for your project to avoid unnecessary bugs that can arise or could arise, and also to enforce coding styles in your team. Let's say you're working in a team. So with this being said, we have set up ESLint. The other thing we need to set up is that instead of coming to check it manually like this, let's set up a rule, or let's set up a script in our package of JSON that we can just run to check for any linting error. So let's go back to package of JSON, and then let's go to scripts. Let's add another script. We'll call it lint. So if we want to run ESLint, we'll just run it there and say lint. So I'm going to say ESLint, which is the main package. Now, one thing we need to do is this. In ESLint, you can create an ignore file. You can say .eslint ignore. But what I want to do is that I want ESLint to ignore the same thing that is inside my git ignore. Because most of the time, the things inside your git ignore is the same thing that you want to ignore you want ESLint ignoring and you want some other things ignoring. So I don't want to create different files and then passing the same thing there. So I'm just going to reuse what is inside my git ignore. So how do I tell it to ignore the same thing that is inside my git ignore, which I don't really have currently, but I'm going to create it once I'm done with this. So you can say --ignore path. So we are telling it what path should it be, and we are saying that it should be our .git ignore. So this simply means whatever is inside the git ignore it too. So that's what we have told ESLint to do. And then we also pass the extension that is going to lint. And we want it to lint.js, and we also want it to lint.ts. So these are the two extensions that is going to lint, and it's also going to ignore everything that is in the git ignore folder. So what do we want to do? Let's actually create the git ignore folder. So let's file. So let's come back here. outside of the source in the main project directory. Let's right click and click on file and we'll call it .git ignore. So whatever we pass here will not be tracked by Git. Let's say you want to create a repository, you initialize Git, you add whatever you have, you want to push to a remote repository. These items you are going to add here, whether file or folder, will not be tracked by Git. So first of all, we do not want to send our node modules to our remote repository. So we say do not track that. We also do not want to send the build folder. So we are going to put it there. And also, we don't want to send the environment variable. Let's say we do create an environment variable at some time later. We don't want it to be sent because that's where we're storing our API keys or whatever we are using. So let me just add it for now. So I'm going to say .env. So I'm going to save. So now everything inside here would be ignored by Eslint or JSON based on the rules that has been passed here by Eslint. I mean, based on the rule that we have passed, I say ignore part. We want you to ignore everything in .git ignore. So we have set up Eslint. So that is that. Okay, so with this being set up now, let's now lint. So whenever I want to use this, we'll go back to the terminal. I minimize. I'll go to the terminal. And we can just run yarn lint to lint our application. And we can pass a command line, a flag. We can pass a flag by saying dash dash fix. So we want it to run and fix. So we say enter. And then it says done in whatever seconds is done running. We just have a single file actually. So, and there's nothing to fix there. All right, but that is how you do it. So anytime you want to use this, you will just run yarn lint. So let's say you have like a deployment pipeline and you want to lint. You want to make sure there's no error before you push to production. You can pass this command in your build script and then have it lint before pushing. So that make sure that everything is working perfectly or everything is following your coding style. All right, so we have set up linting. Now let's set up the next item, which is Prettier. So linting helps us to enforce our coding style, to catch bugs. Prettier will help us to format our code. So we don't have to waste our time trying to format the code to be in a specific way. And Prettier complements Eslint a lot. So first of all, we are going to install Prettier. So we are going to say yarn add -d. It's a dev dependency. I'm going to say Prettier. Prettier has been installed. I can clear this now and I can expand my VS Code. Now, let's go here outside of the source folder in the top level directory. We're going to create a file. I will just call it .prettier rc, which is just a Prettier file. So it's going to be in JSON format. So we're going to use double curly braces. And then we pass our rules here. So let's add a rule. Some people like to say that they like single quote. So they say single quote true. I just want to test that out. So I'm not going to say false. I'll say true. So this means that I want Prettier to turn, anytime I say, whatever I do, I want Prettier to format the code to be using single quote. So let's say I go back here. If you look at here correctly, I'm using double quote. So let's configure a script and then we'll run the script and then let's watch it to change this to single quote. So let's go back to package.json and let's add one more thing, one more script here, which is for Prettier. So we're going to call it format. So anytime we say yarn format, we are running Prettier. So how is Prettier going to be configured? So for Prettier, we are doing a similar thing to what we did in our Eslint. Instead of creating a file to tell Prettier to ignore, what we are doing is that we are saying ignore the same thing as is in our git ignore. So whatever is in our git ignore, we want you to ignore it too. Then we say -- right, and then we pass it a regex to track this kind of files, the one that has .js, .ts, or .json, and we want you to track it and format it. So now, if I go back, if I open index.ts, for example, and I go back and I pull up the terminal, once I run yarn run format, if I hit enter, just watch as this guy here is going to change to single quote because of the rules that is passed there that says single quote true. So if I hit, now if you watched it, it formatted everything that you can get access to, and then this changed to single quote. That is that. So that's because of the rule. You can add more rules for it to affect. You can add more rules. And if you notice, it doesn't go through our build, it doesn't go through anything like that because we have passed that as part of our rules that we do not want that to be tracked. If you remember what we had in our package in our git ignore, we gave all these things. We don't want them to be tracked by Git, and we also don't want Eslint to look at them. We also don't want Prettier to look at them. But I'm actually a fan of double quote, so I'm just going back to Go and change the rule to false. So I want double quote, and I run it again, and then if we look back here, we should have my double quote back. If I say yarn run format, and then my double quote is back. So with this now, we've been able to set up TypeScript, we have set up Eslint, and also we have set up Prettier. So we are ready to go. You can search for more rules if you want to apply more rules. But for this project, we have set up these ones here that we'll be using. So that is that. The next thing we'll be doing now is to get into building our server application.